Hey everyone, it is Flipman Dan, and today we have a very special guest. It is Sebastian Pilch. This guy and his wife have been flipping for multiple years, generating a six-figure income on eBay and other reselling apps. And he's got a lot of expertise. Sebastian, thanks for coming out, man.
Thanks for having me, dude. This is awesome. I love talking about reselling. I love spreading the word of this.
Great. So Sebastian, first of all, where can we find you on online?
Pretty much everywhere, Resell Junkie. Look me up. If you type it into the search bar, it actually helps the algorithm and it helps Google like us more. So just type in Resell Junkie.
Awesome, man. So where did the journey begin for you reselling?
So I've been thrifty my whole life because I've been poor my whole life. I've never had a good amount of money, none of that. A few years ago, I just got miserable with my corporate job. And literally, I started slacking off and I had nothing to do. So pretty much I had a corporate sales job. I had a little thrift route and this little sales route kind of added up together, right? Where the thrift stores were is where my customers were. So I had time to kill between like seeing my customers. So I'd go thrifting. Well, while killing time, I realized that there was a lot of stuff out there. Like it was kind of crazy how much stuff I was finding. Like these little like 20-minute like ways to kill time at work ended up being like me walking out of the store with literally $500 worth of inventory. It was just insane. And it just kind of snowballed from there to where I looked at my wife one day. I'm like, what's the number? Like, what do we need to do for you to be like, all right, let's just pull the trigger, let's quit our jobs and let's go do this. We did $10,000 and that was our like number, right? We said, if we do $10,000 on eBay in 1 month, we'll just quit our jobs, or we'll start to quit our jobs. Right? I could quit my job and then she can quit hers a few months later. That happened 3 months in a row. And we're like, you know what? Let's just do it. Let's see. Let's just take the chance. We're miserable at our jobs. We hate our day to day. Like literally my wife was depressed. I was depressed. We were angry. We were arguing. Like literally nothing was going the right way. The second I quit my job, my whole life changed. It was insane. Like it was almost like someone flipped a switch. The next morning I woke up, it was like a rebirth almost, right? Started going thrifting every single day. I mean, I would go 5 times a day. Literally, I would go thrift shopping 5 times a day because I was so happy. I was so excited. Like I didn't have to work anymore and this business was flourishing. And it was everything worked out. It was almost crazy. It's not that I got lucky. I put a lot of effort into this, right? But I was lucky because I have a lot of weird life experiences that led up to making this like experience really easy for me in a way. Like it's been a lot of hard work. I don't want to like say that it hasn't, but my kind of starting point was a little bit more escalated than others, coming from like a sales background and having, fashion industry and technology industry like experience and just all of those things. It really made it quite simple for me to leave the corporate world and to start thrifting full time. But
Wow.
it's not like that for everyone. Unfortunately, a lot of people have more ties than that. I didn't have my son at the time. Our life wasn't so serious at the time. So again, it really worked out for us. The timing, right? This is 3 years ago. This is pre-2020 craziness. And like everything was just, I want to say normal. Like there was no extremes in the world. Like it was just easy and we built this and it's been hard ever since. I mean, it's gotten hard every single year. There's been struggles, but we haven't really had real jobs in a long time. And it's great, man. It's really great.
That's awesome, man. So, when you made that jump to become a full-time reseller, what were some of the mistakes and lessons you learned in making that jump in the beginning that kind of became easier over time?
So it's 2 things. It's 2 really, really big things that everyone messes up in the beginning. It's their process and they're too eager, right? They get too excited, they get too emotional, right? It's fun and it's all great and it's emotional and it's like a treasure hunt. We could put all these like wishy-washy like words to it, right? But at the end of the day, we're going to thrift stores, it's dirty, we're finding used stuff and we're being scavengers, right? You can whitewash it any way you want, but that's what we're doing. At the end of the day though, it's like, where was I going? Sorry, I lost my train of thought there on
No,
that one.
yeah. The processes
The
and
processes
yeah.
and getting emotional. Sorry.
Mhm.
So people go to thrift stores like, and they see these people have these crazy wins on social media, right? They see these $1,000 wrap T-shirts, and I don't know if you saw it, but I found an Apple HomePod the other day, literally for $4, and I sold it for $190 a few hours later. People think that's normal. That's not normal. People don't understand that that never happens. That item should have never got onto the floor. Like, it's pure dumb luck, but you need to distance yourself from the emotional aspect and getting overly excited about things before fully like processing the situation. So whether it's like finding a piece of inventory and thinking it's worth $1 million when it's really just worth $10 and you just don't know that, or if it's doing a bulk buy from someone on Facebook that is actually a really sketchy person, but you're just really excited because you're getting a good deal. I
Right,
mean,
right.
the amount of sketchy characters I've dealt with in my time, I'm not proud to say, but it's definitely been quite a few. I mean, you meet them, you know who I'm talking about on Offerup.
Oh yeah.
Offerup does not have the brightest group of individuals on there. I mean, I'm sorry, but it's just people know to go on there to find scams and to do scams. It's just kind of common knowledge, you know.
Right.
But people get so emotional, they get so wrapped up in like getting a good deal or making a huge flip. They don't understand what's actually going on in front of them, right? Like the guy is waving his hand over here, but he's really just reaching around and taking your money, and he's selling you stolen goods or broken goods. So I'm saying all that because I've been scammed. I've bought broken cell phones. I've bought like expired makeup because I didn't know that makeup could expire when I was younger and all that stuff, right? People get so excited and they want these $1,000 sales and they just want every day to be perfect, and they lose sight that things are at a thrift store for a reason, right? Not everything at a thrift store is there because everyone's a good person. Like some things are just junk and people donate junk. So before you get excited, look at every single thing. I still to this day, I get too excited about things. I buy them without thoroughly looking over them, or I'm making like a stupid TikTok video at the thrift store and I miss something. Like literally this happens. It happened to me the other day, like a huge gaping hole on a piece of like clothing that I missed as a professional clothing seller because I wasn't paying attention and I was getting emotional into TikTok and making a cute video, right?
Right.
So
So when you talk about leaving your heart out of it when it comes to getting these items, and believe me, I've made those mistakes before where I've had this shiny item thinking that I give it a quick look on eBay and it's someone listed it for this amount of dollars and it
right.
must be worth it, but that's sometimes that's not the case. So keeping your feet on the ground when it comes to going to thrift stores, that's a good tip. So you
Yeah.
mentioned processes. So obviously you can't do everything yourself, right?
So as far as process, this was my biggest crux in the beginning and why we didn't grow faster and maybe why we're not at a higher level than maybe we should be right now. So I mean, I have videos, I have photos of this. I talk about this on my blog. It's just how bad I used to be at this. Like just so bad, man. Like I had this little room in our house, this little back room where I use as my eBay room. It was the most overwhelming, depressing room I could ever like put you in. It was so dark. The shelves were up to the rafters, right? Like the lighting was really yellow, and I had death piles. I mean, literally just bags of stuff sitting there for months. And I'm not saying that to try to show off. That's clearly an awful thing to say, but literally just things were sitting there for months and I couldn't even like bear to touch them, right? Because I was so overwhelmed and so miserable being back there. And one day I just looked at my wife. I'm like, this is just ridiculous. We literally have over $1,000 like sitting there. We have $1,000 worth of stuff sitting there, but it hasn't been listed. It hasn't been tested. Nothing's been done because I'm lazy and I don't know how to even start, right? So we completely tore that room apart. We completely gutted it. We moved everything around. We moved stuff into the basement. We literally aired it out. We got rid of the tall shelves. We changed the lighting. We changed the whole ambiance in that room. And again, literally overnight, it became something good and productive and beautiful. And like there was money to be made in that space now rather than just like this dark, depressing hole of a room. And it
Right.
sounds so, I just talked about not getting emotional, right? But
Yeah.
there's a lot of emotions in this. Like people just think I'm reselling used crap online, but there's a lot of struggles. There's a lot of like inner turmoil with this, right? The constant struggle, you know how it is to find inventory, to deal with people, to logistics and all these things. And then on top of that, if you don't have a process and your space isn't your own, and before we started this video, you guys talked about my space. Like I put a lot of effort into this because I sit here every single day and I film here every single day. So I want it to be something that is engaging and something that's captivating, not only to people watching my videos, but to me. Because at the end of the day, you know, as a creator, if you're not inspired, there is no way you're going to get anything done. It doesn't matter how much money someone throws at you or how much fame or followers you want. If that inspiration or that muse isn't there, it's not going to happen, right? And it's the same thing for reselling. It's the same thing for if you're a dentist, like your dental office should inspire you to work and inspire you to make your process better, you know?
Right.
And I'm not saying every new person needs to be like Amazon and have their process so down and barcode everything. No, but there needs to be like A to a Z. You need to know where things are starting and what your actual end goal is. Because if you don't know what the goal is, then you're just going to kind of float around in the minutia and nothing's ever going to get done like it did for us, you know? So,
That, that's a good point. You know, don't take your the space that you work for granted. And
oh,
obviously, it can become overwhelming, especially when dealing with both storing and listing. So, do you have any tips for someone who is, say, starting out with a blank canvas of a garage or something like
mhm.
that? How would you tell them to set up their reselling operation?
So I've tried a bunch of different methods. I've tried to, again, make myself feel special, and I've done the barcode method. I've bagged every single item individually. I paid like $50 a month for an inventory software with barcodes and a mobile app and like all these things, right? Like I tried to make it bigger than what it needs to be. Right now, we sell six figures. We sell a bunch of things every single month. And we don't have any of that. We literally just have shelves. We have some totes, and we have the bin name on it. That's about it. And then on eBay and the custom label feature, we just put where the item's located. If you want to go fancier than that, by all means you can. But again, you're going to be spinning your wheels, making yourself feel special because at the end of the day, unless you're like a multi-channel high-level seller and you're cross-listing on every single platform and all these things are talking to each other, you don't need all these crazy tools and you don't need anything fancy. You just need something that works for you. And what works for us is just bins and shelves because again, we mostly sell clothing. You know, it's literally 99% clothing. So it doesn't really matter, you know, as far as like heavy things and all that good stuff. Now, if
Gotcha.
someone's trying to, you know, trying to flip VCRs and things like that, it's going to require a little bit more intentionality because the last thing you want to do is just stack a bunch of like VCRs on top of each other and then have to like dig through piles. So with those things, you definitely want to get a little bit more creative. And this is where like being again creative or being able to MacGyver things is great, you know. So set
Right.
up your shop, your process, your garage, however like kind of makes sense to you, but just don't overthink it. That's the biggest thing, man. As long as you can find something within 30 seconds to at the most a minute, you shouldn't overthink it at that point, you know?
Right.
So
That's actually really impressive that you're able to have a six-figure business and not dive too deep and put all these extra steps in the way of you making
mm,
your sales if you have a system that works for you.
yeah.
That's definitely that's great advice. So when finding your niche, obviously it took you some time to settle on clothing.
Mhm.
Talk about how you went through that journey and how you settled on that niche.
All right. So this is going to kind of be a story, but it does
Mhm.
wrap up. I'm not going to ramble on too long.
Sure.
When I was younger, again, I was not like really, really poor, but like I was poor. I'm the son of immigrants, like just all that kind of story, right? So my parents never cared about my clothing or like what was cool, right? So I always wanted Jordans and I always wanted these things, but my parents would never buy me nice shoes. I remember really vividly in elementary school, I wanted a new pair of Nikes and I only had one pair of shoes. So I went home one day and I took some scissors and I literally cut those shoes and forced my parents to buy me new shoes. Like I literally destroyed those only pair of shoes. So where I grew up and like in the 90s, like kids still made fun of each other for like clothing, or you know what I'm saying? Like kids were really mean back in the day. Like if you ever tried to be different or into clothes or fashion, like people would just call you names. So I always suppressed that for a long time, and I lost interest in clothing for a long time. Like for, I mean, many years. I mean, over 15 years, I did not care about clothing. So I ended up following photography towards fashion photography, which is really interesting, right? I had this dream of becoming a professional photographer, and I went down the fashion route. I was shooting this one kid in New York City that I met on Craigslist. He's the first person I ever did a free shoot with in New York City, right? This guy named Justin. He changed my life completely. We went downtown during New York City Fashion Week, and he was a blogger, so I was just taking a few shots of him. And we ended up going to this store named Suit Supply. It's in the middle of New York City in Soho, which is like the fashion capital of the world. We're standing there in line, and like there's all these like really good looking dudes with suits on, just like looking really proper there. I'm like, Justin, this place is like really cool. He's like, yeah, just go apply. I'm like, what do you mean apply? Why would I apply here? I'm just like a photographer, stupid chef, right? So I applied. I don't know why I applied. I listened to this kid. And at this time, I had left the Michelin star world of cooking in kitchens to make donuts. So I had just left my dream job to make donuts at this startup. And now I'm leaving my original culinary career path in life to take a sales job in fashion, which I know nothing about, right? So this is a suit shop, and I had never worn a suit in my life. I got the job, and I was selling suits to big shots within 2 months. I was on that floor selling suits. So I learned a lot about clothing, but I really learned one valuable lesson. And if anyone's going to listen to anything I say on this podcast, is to never think with your own wallet. Okay. Whatever is in your bank account does not mean anything. Okay. People spend a lot of money on crazy stuff, and I need people to understand what that means. Me as just one crappy salesperson, I can get a guy to buy $5,000 worth of suits within 20 minutes on his lunch break in New York City. It happened all the time. It was insane how much these people spent on just clothing, right? And this is just their clothing budget. I mean, these guys literally would just spend $5,000 a month on suits just to replenish them. It was not a big deal whatsoever. With that job, I learned a lot of confidence skills. I learned how to interact and make small talk. And I learned what fashion was, and I understood what quality was. Not so much what like cool brands and like what like the kids like. I really truly understood the psychology of what people wanted, like rich people, right? What people that had real taste wanted. I saw these guys, and I knew how they dressed, and they understood clothing more than just a brand name, right? They weren't just wearing Gucci to wear Gucci. They were wearing different brands, and they were intentional with it. And that kind of showed me the intentionality and maybe the thought process of clothing and how important clothing actually is to most people. But it also taught me that people are crazy. Like people, I had friends that had $1,000 sneakers and then were wearing $2,000 boots. And I mean, this was so common. It was insane. Like it was the amount of stories I could tell you about crazy values of clothing that I know about just because of firsthand experience from friends or from free shoots that I was doing with people. It blew my mind. So I'm like, if people are spending this much money on it, everyone wears clothing, why not sell clothing? Like we were saying earlier too, like it's easy to ship. There's no logistical nightmares to it. And then when you find your niche in clothing, because like just clothing in general is not a niche, right? It's too broad of a topic. You'll get flooded if you just want to sell clothes. Most people don't understand that used men's clothes is a niche because men are brutes and they destroy their clothing. So it's hard to find, right? It's just one of those things where all these things snowballed from me being in elementary school, desperately wanting to be cool and fitting in, to getting this stupid sales job, luckily, and learning like what real value is. And it just all wrapped up. I don't know. It just kind of came to our niche. And now, like I told you in our Instagram DMs, like our market is active males between 30 and 55 years old, you
Mhm.
know?
So when you were saying don't think with your wallet, what did you mean by that?
Dude, there's people with so much money out there that spend so much money on stupid stuff. People think that just because I have $1,000 in my bank account, that that's all that people have, or that I only buy $10 t-shirts, that people only buy $10 t-shirts, when there's t-shirts that are $1,000 that people buy every single day. Right? It's one of those things where people are scared to ask for money. Or maybe like you kind of understand when you're starting out as a videographer, your skills maybe weren't so high, so you did free shoots, right? You did a lot of free stuff. I don't even have to ask. I know you did, right? So
True.
it's the same thing here, right? It's like people think that just because they don't buy certain things or they don't spend this much money on certain things, that they're scared to ask for money. They're scared to think that things are valuable. This kind of happens in like the vintage t-shirt market. A lot of the prices are like just crazy, crazy high and flooded, but it also comes because like those items are really, really, really rare, right? You don't find those items ever, and there are rich people that want those items. There are business owners that want those items as collectibles. And that's another thing, is like people think that they're only selling to people. They don't understand that people on eBay, they could be like movie producers. You don't have no idea who you're selling to. So maybe like, yeah, ask for more money than what things are worth, and don't be scared to ask for money for things. It's just like a general life lesson. People are scared to talk about money, and they're scared to ask for money because they think that money doesn't exist, but there's a lot of money out there in the world. So that's kind
Right.
of, it's something I just want to like make people understand, is just because you make 40,000 a year doesn't mean that there's not someone that makes 40 grand a day, right? It's
Absolutely.
yeah.
So as far as how you go about reselling, so you're pretty much all on eBay at this point, and you've sung its high praises. And can you go a little bit into the tactical of some tips that you might have with someone using eBay to sell clothing?
So my number one thing, it's going to suck. In the beginning, it is going to suck so bad. It is not fun whatsoever until you get a bunch of feedback built up, until you get those restrictions lifted off of you. It is not going to be a fun route. It's something that if someone wants to get started selling online, I know I mentioned to you earlier in the DMs too that I despise Poshmark, and I do, but Poshmark and Mercari and platforms like those, they have a lot less of a hurdle for normal people just to get started. So our journey actually did start on Poshmark. That's where I just pulled something out of my closet and I sold it through there really fast. And that's something, even though I don't like Poshmark, I highly recommend people just kind of skip over eBay in the beginning. Now it's crazy because I teach people how to sell on eBay, but as a pure beginner, I'd really rather someone sell something on Facebook, Mercari, or on Poshmark. It's just so much simpler. It's less hurdles. The shipping process is easier. And overall, it's one of those things where like, I wouldn't want to make someone miserable off the get-go because they're not going to ever want to do it again. I want them to have a few wins under their belt, and then I want them to move on into like maybe the bigger world, right? Because eBay is a worldwide marketplace. You have all these sales tools. You can do so much, and you can start a legitimate business on eBay. And there's plenty of legitimate businesses that run on eBay, like Fortune 500, Fortune 50 companies have things on eBay that they sell products through, right? But you don't see that on Poshmark. You don't see that on these other platforms. So eBay is kind of like the big dog in this world. So rather than just thinking about like you need to go on eBay and start an eBay store and list 500 things, no. You need to go in your closet, you need to pull out 10 things that you don't wear, and you need to list them right now. Rather than thinking about eBay, rather than thinking about how stressful it is, all the logistics, all the shipping, you just need to act, and you need to see if you even like this, right? Because people could be watching this, they could be watching all these like YouTube videos about reselling. What if they do their first listing and they hate it? Why are you going to dedicate so much time to this? Like, just because we enjoy it doesn't mean anything, right?
Right.
I'm scrappy. I'm a scumbag, so I like being in the trenches. Not everyone's like that. You can't convince a corporate white collar guy to just quit his job and just do this, right? But you can convince most people to download Poshmark and go sell stuff out of their closet. That's a pretty easy thing to tell people to go do. So that's really what I like to start with. It maybe didn't answer your question as well as you maybe wanted it to, but I really just would rather be helpful and get people going rather than them overwhelming themselves, you know?
No, absolutely. That's great to start the momentum
Mhm.
to become a reseller. So, someone like a person in my shoes,
Mhm.
I kind of came from a different route where I really got established myself on an app, Offerup,
Mhm.
and a lot of people have various things to say about this app. With a decent amount of scammers, but
Yeah.
I think it's the same thing with eBay, where once you establish yourself there and you have all of these reviews and that sort of thing,
Yeah.
less people are inclined to scam you because they know that you're not going to fall for it.
Exactly.
How would you go about establishing yourself quickly on eBay
Mhm.
so you can get over those initial hurdles and then reach those next levels? What's the quickest way to do that?
Okay. So I'm sure you've heard this, but like most people fail right before they win, right? So there's been a lot of points in our eBay history that I've just like looked at my wife Cheyenne and I'm like, I'm done. I am just done. I'm not doing this anymore. I hate this. Like, I'm gonna go look for a job. That's the one hurdle you kind of need to get over. You need to push past that hump and keep listing, right? You mentioned you get scammers and all these messages. I mentioned that I never really got that. I'm not sure why. I'm not sure why. Maybe it's because I was selling vintage electronics along the way. I wasn't, I'm not sure. You know, so I've never had that experience, but I hear about it all the time on the eBay forums. I hear about it all these places. That's all people talk about. Now, I have 2,700 positive feedback, something like that, 2,700 and change. It's taken 3 years to get there, and it's taken me shipping the next day or the same day, offering free shipping, and just being great at customer service, right? So that's the best way to build up credibility. But to actually get that feedback, it just takes pure listings. Like if you're already selling, you've had a few sales wins, and you're like yourself, and you want to get set up, get to 300 to 500 listings. That's my number one tip. Get there, and then your business will change. At least that's what happened for us. Once we kind of hit that 300 stride, it was almost not passive income, but you still have to work for it. But it was money coming in every single day that was spent maybe weeks ago or months ago. It was just we had an influx of inventory now at this point to where it really started feeling like a real business, and you had the cash flow coming in too. That's another big problem with this is people give up too early because, excuse me, they run out of cash. Maybe they buy 1,000 coffee mugs and they think all of them are going to sell in a week, and they just spent 5 grand and they're sitting on it, right? It's the same thing with used inventory. Maybe you're not buying one wholesale lot, but if you're spending $200 a week on used inventory, it's going to add up, especially if those things aren't selling, Like, yeah, it's a savings account, but still you're out of cash. You've burned through your cash and you're waiting for it to come back. Whereas when you have a bunch of inventory and it's all just been kind of sitting there and just stirring and just selling, and you have steady cash, it's a lot easier to pivot and to make bigger buys, just to keep buying every single day, right? Maybe when you're starting out and you have no money, and say you're starting off $100, you spend that $100 and you can't buy any more stuff until you sell some stuff, right? The more
Mhm.
stuff you have listed, the more stuff you can sell. That's like the thing. People want to do 50 listings and then they complain about eBay being slow and things not selling. You only have 50 listings and there's a gajillion things on eBay. It's like, what do you expect? You know?
Right.
And with clothing, this is again why I don't recommend anyone do this just full steam on eBay right away with clothing. It's one of the most competitive categories you could ever be in. It is so competitive. I mean, you have to understand what you're doing or you will not make money. And I'm successful with clothing because I understand clothing. It's not because I'm great at eBay, not because I have some sort of magical process. It's because I know what clothes to buy. Like that's the secret. It's knowing your niche and getting the right product. Right now, I told you we sold a bunch of different things over the years, and we've never really had issues with scams or things like that. But we still had bad times. We still had returns. We still had things get broken. Just we've been through bad situations. We never quit. Again, we just never, ever, ever quit. It's eBay sucks to this day. Bad things happen every single day. I get returns from dummies saying that something is off by like a 1/4 inch of a measurement on a piece of clothing, right? It's things happen daily, and people seem to just want to shelter up and go on the eBay forums and complain and just like fume in it, rather than just being like, all right, let me just take that return and let me just keep going, right?
Yeah.
People want to just sit and fume instead of keeping going.
Yeah.
That's a big problem I see. I see it all the time. And people just get so disheartened and they get frustrated and they like think like eBay's holding them down or like all these crazy things, you know?
Mhm.
It's
Yeah. So definitely try to deliver and do good on customer service in the beginning, and maybe even go out and extremely competitively list some items. That
mm-hmm,
way you can just make sales in the beginning.
100%.
It is something that I'm hearing as well. So as far as how you source,
Mm,
so you briefly mentioned while we were talking before this that it's like almost a gold mine of thrift stores where you're from, and in Utah. And
mm.
is that where you're currently sourcing, or are you wholesale sourcing, or something like that at this point?
No, so when we were in Utah, it was amazing. We live in Colorado now, and
Right.
it's amazing in a different way. So we live in a higher income area with definitely a very different demographic than what we had back in Utah. It's not large families. It's just, usually just smaller, tighter knit kind of communities of people where you find higher quality items, right? Whereas in Utah, we found a bunch of items, but they weren't super high quality. Here, we're finding less items, but they're closer to us and they're way more quality. So, I mean, I have my main thrift stores are just within a few minutes of me. So it's really simple for me just to pop over there and just go get a few things and just come home. And it only takes, literally 45 minutes if I wanted to. Now, we've gone down like the rabbit hole of buying liquidations. Like I had a great source in Utah where I was buying a bunch of those, spent thousands of dollars, and it was great. It was amazing having a bulk source of inventory. But at the same time, all I was doing is buying myself a job. I was getting myself a warehouse. I was getting myself a headache and back pain. We had a lot of stuff, but we had a lot of responsibility and a lot of work. And people are happy buying liquidation lots because it's a lot of inventory at once, which is great, but it's also a lot of inventory that you have to test, right? It's a lot of work. And there's some really great heavy hitters as far as is concerned on YouTube, like Resell Rabbit. I'm not sure if you watch him, but he's a big dude that does liquidation pallets. So I do suggest people watching him. He does a lot of like Target and like just kind of cheaper stuff. And it's just really interesting seeing his perspective on this liquidation game because honestly, it is kind of a game. If you're getting into liquidation, you're probably going to fail and you're going to get ripped off most likely. It's one of those things where you kind of find the scummiest people on the earth selling these things. It's people get ripped off so bad every single day. I've been ripped off on liquidation pallets and just you can't trust them. You really cannot trust them. You have to be so careful of how you source. And then again, it goes back to being emotional. I got ripped off because I was emotional. It's you just have to really be careful when it comes to sourcing like that. But one great way to source now, especially if you don't want to go out, many people don't know this, shopgoodwill.com. You can actually go on there and filter by advanced search by your Goodwill store if they offer local pickup. So you can actually bid on like the best stuff that Goodwill filters out. So if you maybe think that your Goodwill doesn't get good stuff anymore, you should check this website because that's where it might be going.
Wow. So the
Yeah.
advanced people are grabbing it before it hits the shelves online.
Yeah, I'm not sure if you knew that Goodwill does have this auction website, and the majority of their really nice stuff ends up going there. So a lot of us wondered over the course of the past few years, like where did video games go, and like where are all these things that used to be at Goodwill? Why don't they're like on the retail shelves anymore? It's because they're all going to this website. Like people complain about resellers, but then it's like Goodwill's double dipping, but like we're bad people. It's funny,
Right, right.
it's so funny, man. I don't get it.
So, so Sebastian, you're going out to these thrift stores and go, talk to me about your thought process about what you're looking for and
Mm.
what makes a good item to purchase in your shoes.
So when it comes to clothing, I'm looking. Okay, so again, this is going to sound wishy-washy.
Yeah.
I think of this stuff in like a bigger, higher level. When I walk into a thrift store, I don't go through each garment and like look at it one by one. I'm skimming. I'm skimming everything. Like it's like reading a book. You don't read an entire book. At least most people don't read every single word. I don't look at every single item. I just look for fabrics and I look for patterns and styles and shapes, right? So it sounds crazy and it sounds really far-fetched, but when I say shapes, I mean like cargo pockets. And when I say styles, I mean like military. And it's like, I can spot these things out because I know that 99% of the stuff at thrift stores is a waste of my time. Once you know that, once you hone down on what you're actually looking for, you can kind of clear past all the fluff. You ever seen that movie Limitless with Matthew McConaughey when he takes the pill and everything just goes crazy? That's
Yeah,
Cooper. Sorry, that other handsome dude.
Bradley Cooper. Yeah.
Dude, by the way, you kind of look like him. Like his vision goes clear, and that's kind of how I feel in a thrift store. Right? Again, it sounds crazy and it sounds wishy-washy, but it's like, yeah, that's like cargo pocket, military. Like that's how my brain works. If you walk into a thrift store right now and you try to go through every single piece of clothing, they're all 15,000 things that might be on the rack, you will lose your mind. You will absolutely lose your mind.
Shifting towards what once you have the inventory and everything,
Hmm.
are you using any analytical tools to help you make these decisions, or is it just going by feel of what you've sold in the past and your knowledge?
So I look very few things up. When it comes to clothing, I look very, very few things up because most things sell for a general price range. Again, like we probably spend hours just talking about this, but for the most part, like if I have a certain style of vintage t-shirt, I know what it's probably going to sell for. Certain jeans, like I have a baseline kind of threshold of what I know I'm going to get. Now, if I do find something special, something really, really unique, I will always look it up as far as like eBay sold listings. And I mean, if you really want to go down the rabbit hole, you can go down Terapeak and just look into crazy amounts of detail, but I've never, ever done that. I've never needed to as far as used items are concerned. So, yeah, I mean, just I look things up if they're really special. That's kind of my rule. But again, that's because I've wasted a lot of money on stuff that never sold and I memorized that. You know, I've so okay, let me just stop right here. This is a really good life lesson that I learned when I first started this. A college education is really expensive, right? Like a college degree costs you a bunch of money. Kind of the same with a thrift degree. You need to be okay with spending and losing, thousands of dollars a year. That's okay. You should be losing thousands of dollars a year on bad inventory buys because that means you're trying to learn, right? So that's something that really stuck with me in the beginning, is to not like fret that. Like it's going to happen. You're going to buy bad stuff that's going to sit around or never sell or be broken, or that's okay. It's okay to burn through money. There's not a single business in the world, and there's not a single CEO in the world that makes a perfect decision every single time. So it's okay to screw up. That's one big thing I want to make sure people know.
That's really, really solid advice. So when you do have these losses, sometimes what are you doing with this dead inventory? Are you throwing it away or just liquidating it, like at your own garage sale or something like that? What are you doing with this stuff?
If it's really dead, I'll just donate it. I just cut my losses. I don't like storing stuff. I wouldn't say I'm a minimalist, but I definitely don't like having items and possessions. So I'll just donate things. Sometimes bulk sales, but for the most part, I don't like doing that because I don't like selling people junk. You know, I've just never been that kind of guy. I had really bad luck buying wholesale lots off of people, and they were just junk. So I never want to push that onto other people. And it's one of those things where you got to cut your losses. You really do. There's no other way around it. I cut my losses with customers, with returns. You can't fret on those things. You can't just be upset that you wasted $4 on this t-shirt a year ago. Like people literally toil over that, man. Like there's people that are like so upset that their $4 buy didn't sell. It's okay. It's okay. You're not going to win every game.
Right. That's a great philosophy to kind of follow when getting into this industry. So, Sebastian, I want to acknowledge you, man. Thank you for taking out the time and sharing your great depth of knowledge on this topic and everything. Is there anything that you want to leave the audience with? Any final like tips or pieces of advice to help someone along the way?
I was in the lowest point of my life 3 years ago. 3 years ago, lowest point of my life. I had the job that people would say is like a perfect dream job for a stupid idiot without a college degree. I had full benefits, great salary, great commissions, great trajectory in life, all that good stuff. I was so miserable. I cannot begin to tell you how sad and depressed I was. Going to thrift stores and reselling used stuff online changed my life. It changed my family's life. I've been there since the first day that my son was born, and I haven't left this side since. Never had a babysitter, never had any of that. It's the best thing I ever did. And it started because I literally went into my closet and I sold used stuff. There's no other secret, man. People just need to start. There's no secret to this. I don't care what any guru tells you. I sell courses. Don't buy the course. Just start something. I don't need your money. I just want people to do something, but most people will never do anything.
So just get out there and do it, man.
Just do it, man. Just like the t-shirt says, just like Nike branded it, man.
Just do it, dude.
Just do it.
Well, thanks so much. Sebastian, it's great that we had this chat and everything. And I know the audience will be leaving with a lot on their mind to bring to their own businesses. So appreciate you, man. And, we'll be in touch.
We will, dude. Fist bump. Peace. I'm going to send you some photos of those hookup decks, by the way. I think you'll appreciate them. Talk to you later.
All right. Later, man.